There is something happening in Africa that we cannot deny anymore. There is something that would continue to happen in Africa. And that thing in economic terms is called growth. In personal terms, it's a possibility, it's an opportunity for you as an individual to participate in this thing that is happening. Everyone is beginning to believe that something is happening there, something can happen in Africa, and we are able to make that happen. So my name is Ateh Atabong, and I'm from the continent. I lived in Norway for about 20 years, so part Norwegian, part African, and part of that is going to be what I will be talking about. I am talking about why you should invest in Africa. And this is not general, the big numbers and the 2 billion people and all the GDPs. I want to come down to the personal level. Why would an individual who lives in Norway, who's grown up here, who lives around Scandinavia, bother to invest in Africa today, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years? I also am a CEO of a company called Sawa, where we import products from the continent, agricultural products and coffee, and we trade here. I also have a consultancy where I have companies who want to go into the continent to understand part of the things we'll be talking about. So, for many of the people who are interested, maybe for many of you, you have actually made up your mind to invest in the continent, or you're curious about it. And the things that many people consider to be important for them is that you hear very much about the growth in the market. We've heard about the numbers increasing for the houses. There is something happening in Africa that we cannot deny anymore. There is something that would continue to happen in Africa. And that thing in economic terms is called growth. In personal terms, it's a possibility, it's an opportunity for you as an individual to participate in this thing that is happening. And you can do it anywhere and anyhow. In many markets around the world, in some branches, there is saturation. There's not saturation everywhere. There's growth everywhere. There's growth in Norway, there's growth in Oslo, there's growth everywhere around the world. But in some branches, there is saturation. There is a lot of knowledge, there's a lot of information. And you as an investor has the opportunity to bring some of that knowledge and investment over to the African market. Some people want new markets for their products. Some people want new markets to invest in. You hear all the things, there's high unemployment in Africa, so there's a lot of people there who can work, labor is cheaper. So there are many things that incentivize people to want to go to the continent to invest. The last thing I was going to talk about is the population. There's one thing about population. When we talk about all the houses that have to be built and the roads that have to be constructed, there's one thing we should understand as individuals. When you build all of these houses, even if you're not in the construction industry, all the services that these people are going to need have to be provided by entrepreneurs. People have to go to nightclubs, they have to go to bars, they have to go to folk, they have to go to all of those places. So even if you're not in the big picture of things, if you go to a conference where Total and Statoil are sitting, they'll be talking about billions of dollars. But they cannot do all their investments without the signal effect and the spiral effect that comes from all the opportunities that will come that represent, for example, all the opportunities that those startups that talked about. If they would build houses for people, the people have to eat, the people have to have people coming in and out of the country, and that represents a huge opportunity for investors in the market. So, as I was talking, population. You look at the population, they say it's going to be 2 billion people by 2040. The numbers vary. When people get more money, they stop having many children, so the population might change. A lot of things may happen around the world. We don't know. But if things continue the way they are, we would have all these people living on the continent. But that's not all. Next Friday in Oslo will be the highest amount of people who will travel through Gardermoen ever. 102,000 people will be going through Gardermoen airport alone. The population of this country is 5 million. That's one day. If 2 million people are living in Africa, their families, their relatives, their friends, their business partners, all of these people will be coming to the continent and going all the time. Imagine how much needs they would have for housing, for hotels, for tourism. I mean, it's just a huge amount of opportunity you can create there. So while you're looking at the numbers, the GDP, the population, also look behind that as an investor and see, what is it that we have? What is it that I have that I can take to that market to provide services for all of these people who will be making more money, getting their more than $2 a day, and all the population that will come with that. So, I think you're the right audience. I've heard the questions that people are asking. Normally, you go to an audience of people, some want billion-dollar investments, some want 20,000 krona investments. But the typical investor that I'm talking to are the people who are impact investors. Not only impact that they want to create impact, but they want to be part of the process to make things happen. I was in the last Pangea investor group, and I worked with this gentleman over here, and you could see how the group from the start put in their money and the influence that we've been able to do and the build-up of connection that has happened between the startups and the investors over the course of the year. And that is very, very important. That is impact. You can get a lot more done. You can see the value of your money being created. But then you also have to be patient. It's a new market. There are new kinds of problems. You could take 5 MBAs and show up in Africa and not know where to start, because the behavior of human beings is different. An economy is a social science. So when you come into all your economic principles and you get into, I see my friend over there nodding his head very much. When you get there to effectuate change in the market, you realize that you have to use your experience. I always say to people, you cannot navigate in Copenhagen with the map of Oslo. They also have Dronningens and Kongens Gata. But if you take your map there, it's going to be wrong. But if you take your experience from going around the streets here to Copenhagen, then you would easily know that most of the time, Kongens Gata always crosses Dronningens Gata. But you can't use the same map. So investors who are willing to solve problems in the market, if you have your eyes open, you can see a lot of opportunity in the African markets. So one of the things that we know, that we say all the time, is infrastructure. There's a lot of infrastructure needs. We're in an infrastructure startup space with roads. I call them connectors. Roads, railroads, cars, buses, the things that link humans. Because at the end of the day, all this fantastic thing we're talking is just serving human needs. And as we continue to grow, the needs continue to grow, and we have to find solutions to continue serving them. These are typical, no lights, these are typical needs we call hard connectors, all the big stuff. But then it's the soft connectors for impact investors. Many people in this market in Norway, I've lived here 20 years and 21 years in Africa. Many people do not understand what competence and capacity they're sitting on, and how much the small things they know can influence so many people. Because if you have been in a society where there is structure, that alone is a business proposition. I have been to my country, where I come from, Cameroon. It's not a very good example, but there are many other countries in Africa. The problems are the same. Southeast Asia is the same. If you have been in a structural society and worked, you have a wealth of knowledge which can help you to create or navigate a new market and see opportunity in a new market and create business models, which is what we're trying to do here. So I want to give you guys an example. This is now one of my new favorite shops in Norway. It's called Hyttetoget. The first time I showed my friends this, I'm like, I love Hyttetoget. It's good for African business. I'm like, yeah, not really. Because in Norway, the perception is you buy a house, you're comfortable with your house, you do your payments well. If you realize that there's more money, you buy a cabin. And if you're doing well with that and you're getting wealthy, you buy a boat. So a cabin is upscale. So why would you think that a cabin like Hyttetoget is interesting for Africa? A cabin is upscale, but it's also off-grid. Everything you see in this paper is a business opportunity in Africa. And yesterday when I picked up, 2 days ago when I picked up this magazine, before this show I got really excited because my theory has been there for many years, but now they've proven it. If you open this magazine, Bright Products, Eco Water, African companies that are solving problems that people want in their cabins. But this is fantastic for Africa. Solutions for off-grid toilets, solutions for clean water. So if you have lived somewhere where things work and you open your eyes a bit, you can see a lot. Try Hittetåget. Look at Hittetåget as if you were in Africa. All these houses they're going to build, a lot of the solutions are up there in the mountains. Because people went to the cabin to create a space where they would be a little bit primitive and a little bit off. But that didn't work very well. It works for some people. Many people have taken their luxury thinking off-grid. Solar panels. I'm not an engineer, but I saw this fantastic product here. Something you hang on the wall, it looks like just a wall decoration, and it provides heat. So I'm wondering if an engineer could turn it around so it provides cold. Do some kind of inverting. So rather than having all these air conditions we have in our houses now, we could just have some beautiful wall decoration providing cold for us. Who knows? But there's enormous opportunity you can have if you look around. I'll show you another one. This is a reflector, an African reflector. Do you know how many people are driven? You live in Uganda?
Yeah, actually had that idea some years back.
Yes.
It's needed.
Yes. There's something called hit and run in Cape Town. When there are more cars on the road than there are lights, because individuals buy cars for themselves, the countries have not yet created street lights. It's dark. So many African countries, capital, people get run down in the dark. This is simple. It already exists. It costs nothing. The police and the customs will give you this for free. Identifying that opportunity to see, my God, this could save lives. Well, I just made it with the African shape to prove that it's for Africa. But that's what we're talking about. There is an enormous amount of opportunity for anybody who looks. So I just took one example of the big stuff. This is one country with a lot of ambition. By 2030, they want 100% urban electrification, 90% rural electrification. Somebody can know which country is this, somewhere in East Africa. Rwanda. They got big stuff going on, they say. So, the second thing that is happening in Africa is that many country boundaries are being shut down. Or not shut down, but economic zones are being created. I think that's one thing we have to check with your question, which you asked earlier, the intellectual property right. If doing it in one other Eastern African country can also affect for Kenya. Those are the kind of things. Because these blocks that have been created in ECOWAS, East Africa, are serving people a lot. And for an investor, I met a company that does real estate. They wanted to get into DRC Congo, but they're afraid because it's dangerous. So they just set up in Rwanda, which is safer, and then they drive into DRC Congo and work there. But that's because of these borders that have been taken down and the opportunities that have been created. So even if you have security risk issues which you had before, now situations are changing because of these blocks. You could live in Gambia, which is pretty safe, and work in Senegal, for people who know that area. And there's a lot of examples like that in the market. The next thing is that some governments are waking up. Many African governments have realized that if you are flying on a plane with somebody and you're sitting on economy class, you normally don't have access to the business that is happening in business class. So if you want to move from economy class to business class, it's not enough to just go in there and find a seat. You have to actually upgrade your ticket. You have to upgrade your mindset. You have to upgrade how you behave, how you treat people who come into your business, to your country to do business. And that you're seeing in many countries. Many countries are realizing that if they actually want to move forward to where the rest of the world is going, they actually have to up their game. Some governments. And you know there's better investment climate, better business climate. Many of these investment boards have been set up that you can call, go to. It's really easy to get to these people. I have tried Ghana, Rwanda. I haven't tried Kenya. You can actually get to people in the government and get things done if you want to invest. So I took this as a case for Rwanda. You can see that it's online on the visitrwanda.com. Another thing that is happening in the market, which we've spoken to a bit, is the wealth among the people who are living in the market. Economic wealth. People are growing. People are growing from middle class, they're getting richer. And the spiral goes. When people get rich, they will have to employ people, they buy more things, and so some people get up. The next thing is the social wealth. The connection people have around the world. Their friends, their family, the meetings, the groups, all of that is business opportunities you can create. People will have to meet online, people will have to do things. Another thing that is happening in Africa, which I would say I realize very much as an African, is the psychological wealth. Many Africans are beginning to believe that they can actually make things work. You can go in there with all the ideas in the world. If the people on the ground are not taking it in and making it work, you just create another NGO generation. But the people there, people who live in Africa, people who live out of Africa, everyone is beginning to believe that something is happening there, something can happen in Africa, and we are able to make that happen. The next thing you have with your urbanization challenge is that people, when humans get more money, they change their hygiene practices, they want luxury products. I mean, a small change in someone's money can actually create a very incremental change in their needs. All of these needs have to be satisfied. And that's a huge opportunity for people who live here, people who live abroad, people who come from markets where you have opportunity for capital. Capital is expensive in Cameroon. I think you experience many companies there cannot borrow money in the markets to do, for example, manufacturing. It's expensive. But if you can have capital from outside, which is patient and knowledge also. When we're talking about investment, I'm not only referring to money. Money is just one part of it. The knowledge, your time and your capacity that you are building to these companies is more valuable than money. Last year I had a company in Cameroon. They called and they said, oh, I hear you're working with some startups. I have a company that bakes cupcakes. And I talked to this girl, she needs capital. And I'm like, how much do you need? I don't know. I'm like, so if I give you the money, what are you going to do with it? Build my business. Do you have a customer? Not really. But this person has been going for 6 months looking for capital. We've worked with the startup for 8 months without giving them 1 kroner. Today they're making 6,000 kroner a month selling cupcakes, just with knowledge and partnership. That is the wealth of resource that many people sit with, that you want to transfer into the market. It's not only monetary investment. Many times, if you give startups a lot of money, some startups, it's really, really bad for them. Yeah. The next is the digital transformation. Everybody knows that. It's just, there's a lot of things that can be done. Africa has adopted and leapfrogged the digital transformation in the world to degrees to which people couldn't see, but you still have opportunities to link the state. The other company that was trying to link the building industry. There's a lot of knowledge and capacity sitting around the world that could be transferred. ICT as a connector, you have governments can now take more revenue by connecting. My wife went over to Rwanda last year. She said in order to stop corruption, to stop government officials taking money, he just took away the money. So you pay everything online or with your phone, which is a good problem. I wish somebody brings that over to my country, Cameroon, because every time you pay government officials, the corruption is not only there, there's corruption, it's like everywhere, in many places. So if you can take away the money, if you can make it easier for people not to steal, not to have access to money, you can solve a lot of problems. For many people who live abroad, for many people who want to invest, if you have vehicles where you can transfer money, control your money, and bring back your money or bring back your returns, that creates enormous amount of opportunity. And ICT is certainly one of those sectors where many countries in Africa are getting right, and that's beautiful. But there's still a lot that has to be done in healthcare, public service, urbanization. I mean, of course, the computers and the ICT will not build the roads and the buses, but it will make it easier for people to navigate in the markets as they are today. So I just took some examples from the development boards or the investment boards from countries that have organized development boards where you can reach people and talk to people. And they give specific projects that you can invest in and specific projects that groups of people or individual companies. So that's just a bucket list. That was it. Thank you.